Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Good Vibes Gaming discussion. I'm Brandon Miracle, and today I'm joined by Daniel Alba and Ash Paulson to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 3, a movie we've all been very, very much anticipating. And we've all seen it, and we're ready to talk about it. Ash, I'm just going to throw it to you right away, man. What did you think?
Man, I will say this. During the last 30 minutes, I leaned over to my wife, who was next to me, and I said, this has crossed the threshold into porn. This is just porn now. We're watching porn. And I mean, that that last 30 minutes, I enjoyed the whole movie, but that last 30 minutes was absolutely peak cinema and made for Sonic fans. And oh my God, I guess we'll get into like major spoilers at the end, but yeah, I had a great time. I'm still debating whether this or Sonic 2 is my favorite in the franchise, but I think it's probably going to end up being this one, and I had a fantastic time, as I assume you guys did as well.
Yeah, what did you think, Daniel?
I'm scared, you guys. I'm not used to living in a world where so much Sonic media is well received by everybody. I'm so used to a world in which I consume the Sonic media, I enjoy it more than most, and then I figure out later I'm supposed to hate it from secondhand opinions. But nowadays, it's been amazing to be a Sonic fan. This year in particular, I think Shadow Generations, that section of Sonic Generations, like Shadow's portion, did really well, was well received from everybody. The previous Sonic movies have done really well. Sonic Frontiers may have mixed opinions, but I enjoyed what I played as far as what direction it was going, because it's kind of leading into what the Sonic franchise is leading into now. And then Sonic Movie 3 was really good. I really enjoyed what I saw. I almost said what I played. No, what I saw of Sonic the Movie 3. I felt like I was playing a game at some points of that movie, because there was a lot going on. But yeah, overall, I think the overall portrayal of Shadow to the big screen was pretty well done, and I liked the story bits that he was able to be able to show off on the big screen.
Yeah, they did Shadow a lot of justice here, and that's both because of the writing of the movie and because of Keanu Reeves. Keanu, I mean, no one expected Keanu to phone it in, and he didn't. He did a great job. I love his interpretation of Shadow. He did an excellent job, as did most of the cast. I did have one casting criticism, and it's not even new cast, it's old cast. I thought, I don't know what you guys think, but I thought Tom and Maddie felt a little stapled onto this movie.
I go back and forth. Like, on one hand, like I think they responded to the criticism where they had less human stuff than ever.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, I personally never really had an issue with Maddie and Tom. Like, I of all the human stuff, I enjoyed their presence the most in the first two movies. And on one hand, I'm like, okay, there was less of them ever than in Sonic 3. But maybe that's a good thing. But at the same time, I also enjoy their presence, and maybe, I wouldn't have minded them being around a little bit more. But at the same time, it's like, most people didn't want the human element, right, in the movie, and they, for mostly better, I think, responded to that criticism, and, well, Tom and Maddie weren't in it very much.
I think we've seen in these movies at this point that the human aspect of the characters are starting to become less and less as the movies go on. Because, of course, in the first movie, you have Sonic and everybody else. It's only Sonic. But now that we're introducing Tails and Knuckles, and now with Shadow, you would expect that now there's more of a less of a focus on any of the humans of the movies. And now we're focusing on like the core Sonic characters, because that's what the whole movies are about now, especially with Shadow being present. So I don't really mind the fact that they've kind of shoehorned them in to the whole like sinking into the base segments. But I think what concerns me more about the movie, and I don't know if you all felt this way, there was actually more of Jim Carrey than there was of Shadow, it feels like. Especially with, you have to show both Robotniks at this point. and sometimes it felt a little much. But when Shadow was there, it was a very well done portrayal of Shadow. But it did feel like it lingered a bit too much with Jim Botnick over here.
I enjoyed the Jim Botnick subplot. I much prefer this as a B plot to the other humans, where we didn't go to a wedding this time, which was great. And I don't even hate the wedding in the second movie. I actually like that portion a bit. But yeah, they really double down on the Jim Carrey, no pun intended. And it works because Jim does offer a very wide-ranged performance, I think, between the two versions of Robotnik, and from an emotional standpoint. They actually do some interesting things with the characters there that allowed him to play a little bit more into some different range, other than just being crazy wackadoodle Eggman the whole time. And I appreciated that. But I do agree, I think it did lean a little bit too far into Jim Carrey over Shadow. There are some elements of Shadow's backstory that I would have liked to have seen done a little bit differently. Given the runtime of the movie, though, I do think it's a very valiant attempt, and it is well done for what it is. But I think they could have tipped the scales back towards Shadow a little bit more. And I know I'm thinking about this from a logistics standpoint, but every time Shadow's on screen, that's dollar bills that they're paying, and
For sure.
and it's probably way more dollar bills than Jim Carrey, just because CG and that kind of thing. And when you have 4 CG anthropomorphic animals on screen for the majority of your movie, that gets very pricey very quickly.
It definitely does. But I do agree. I share in that criticism. I think my one main issue with the movie, and my wife mentioned this too when we talked about it after, was that it just didn't feel like there was enough Shadow in the second act. For much of the second act, he was just chilling with Agent Stone. They're having guacamole, or making guacamole, and they were just kind of chilling. Revenge guacamole.
Watching telenovelas together,
yeah,
as men do.
Yeah, and so as fun as that was, I do wish there was more Shadow in the movie, especially in the second act. And that was maybe my main criticism. But as you said, Brandon, and you're so right, obviously, it's so incredibly expensive to have these characters on screen. And that was, I think, a big issue with the Knuckles streaming series that we saw earlier this year, which ended up being more like, Wade and his echidna friend more than Knuckles. And yeah, that was my main issue. I still had a great time. Thought they did a fantastic job with the running time they had. Obviously, there were elements of Shadow's backstory that we know from the games that did not get implemented into the movie, such as the bio-lizard. But as I also mentioned to my wife, how are you going to explain the concept of a biological power source that happens to be a giant lizard for the Eclipse Cannon in a 2-hour runtime, right? Or a sub 2-hour runtime. That just wasn't going to work, and so I'm not surprised that they didn't have the bio-lizard aspect of his backstory. But mostly, I think they did a great job translating his whole ethos and why he is who he is and why he is the way he is in a 2-hour movie. And other than him not being very much present for the second act, just to give Jim Carrey ×2 more screen time, I thought they did a great job, really, compacting his character into a 2-hour runtime.
Yeah, I agree. I think they took the most important elements of his backstory, namely his relationship with Maria. I do have one criticism with the Maria story, though, and I feel like she was not allotted the time needed to give her the emotional weight that she had, compared to the games. The whole element of her being sick and everything was just kind of absent from that plot.
It was,
and I think that's an important part of the story. I mean, I don't want to get too far into spoilers yet, but there is a significant change to Shadow's backstory that kind of eliminates that part of the plot entirely. But like you said, the 2-hour runtime, they only had so much time to fit all these pieces together, and I think they made the appropriate choices given that limitation.
Yeah, I think I by and large agree.
Yeah, there realistically isn't any way to get all that information from not just Sonic Adventure 2, but also everything else that kind of compounded and has built up Shadow's backstory to here. But they got the most important parts, I think. I guess, the emotional aspect of Maria was kind of missing, as you mentioned. But the parts that were there were very wholesome. Like he's just Shadow just skating through the base, and Maria's like on the rope and just going through. I like that she was using skates. Like that was like a little nod that some short little bit of foreshadowing, no pun intended, for their meeting. The little drawing that she did on the on his little containment tube, just little things like that. Watching the like 50 years ago animatronic horror film with the monsters, the kaiju monsters, and then how relating like
the kaiju monster, by the way, was the bio-lizard.
Oh, really? You're so right. I didn't mention, I didn't notice that. You're so right.
I didn't notice it either. My friend that went to the movie with me told me after the fact, and I was like, oh my God. That's right over my head.
That's great. I didn't even realize that. That's actually pretty cool.
There's a lot of little Easter eggs and nods that I want to make sure we cover at some points before this is over. But yeah, that was a great one. Little moments that we didn't see in the games that was expanded upon. I think those were really nice moments with Shadow and Maria in particular.
Yeah, I think that they really understood the assignment and they accomplished it to great success. One other thing that really impressed me with the movie is, Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 kind of piddle around for a while before things really start happening. Sonic 3, I was curious because it had a shorter runtime than Sonic 2. And I was like, well, how much time is that going to leave for the Shadow story and the Space Colony arc and all that stuff? But no, the movie hits the ground running and it never stops. They get right into the plot. Immediately, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are given their quote-unquote mission, and suddenly it's all Hedgehog all the time for the rest of the film.
Absolutely, and man, I still keep going back to that scene where they drop out of the gun helicopter.
Yeah,
and it's so cool. It's such a style. It's such a style shot. But the way they all fly down and they land, I'm like, oh man, when I saw that.
Little Sonic Heroes reference on the way down, too.
Yep. And it instantly reminded me of everything I loved about Sonic 2. Because I don't know about you guys, but I got a little emotional at the end of Sonic 2 when they all finally, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles come together. And you see the three of them take on Eggman together, running around and teaming up. I got a little emotional. And seeing that at the beginning of this movie, them dropping down, having their hero shots, I was like, oh man, I'm back, I'm home. This is exactly what I want to see on the big screen. It was so cool.
Talk about low budget flights, no food or movies, I'm out of here. They really just threw that in there.
Yeah, I love it.
Yep.
Oh man, there's so many great little moments like that. The Sonic Adventure 2 title screen pose makes a couple appearances actually.
Yep,
it sure does.
And the whole Chow Garden segment was so fun.
That was amazing.
So fun. I love the way, and I love the chaos too. But like when the Chow Garden starts getting blown up, I love the giant Chow characters just kind of bumbling around while things are exploding around them. I'm like, okay, I'm appreciating this chaos here.
One of those Chow on stage was dressed like Samba de Amigo. Did you see that? He had the sombrero hat on and two maracas on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I missed that. That's awesome.
There's a Migo reference. That was I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like Sonic 3 took a lot of inspiration from the Super Mario movie. Like from a committal standpoint, like we're allowed to commit this hard and still have a widely appealing movie. And while they don't go as far as the Super Mario movie, they go a lot further than they did with like 1 and 2, and I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, like they keep pushing it, right? Like with 2, they went a lot farther than 1, and with 3, they went further than 2. And so I can only imagine with 4, we're just going to get full on I almost feel weird saying this, but like I almost hope that Maddie and Tom get a reason to be in 4, because they're just pushing it further and further with each movie, and by the 4th movie, it almost feels like there won't even be a human element, which I know most people would be happy about. But again, I give Maddie and Tom a pass. The rest, fine. But Maddie and Tom, they get a pass for me.
I like Tom and Maddie too. When I mentioned it earlier, like I felt like they weren't given a good enough reason to be there.
Right.
They were literally sitting around at home waiting for a reason to do something. Like that was the whole plot for them. But yeah, as you were mentioning, just the whole movie just kind of hit the ground running. Like the first sequence with Sonic chasing Shadow on the bike, of which of course he pulled out a gun right away. They went right straight into Shadow the Hedgehog. That was probably one of my favorite sequences in the entire movie. Just that chase itself, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool that they do this in Sonic 2 as well, where Sonic and Knuckles have a fight right towards the beginning of the movie, but it's very short. Knuckles very quickly overpowers Sonic, but in this one, you actually get a decently long struggle between Sonic and Shadow that really sets up their rivalry well. And it's one of several times that they actually square off, which I really like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. There are some really, really great showdowns between Sonic and Shadow, and I think the Act 3 showdown between them is maybe my favorite part of the movie. There's so much catharsis, and it's so cool seeing them face off, especially later on in the movie. But yeah, I agree with you, Daniel. That chase scene at the beginning ended up being one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I especially love that one part where he's like, the more you talk, the more I want to hit you. Because, like Sonic, obviously, we love him. He's an awesome character, but he's so obnoxious, and that's part of his appeal, right? He's so annoying sometimes. He will not shut up, and I feel like Shadow saying that he's like speaking through the audience. He's like, oh my God, yes, you're Sonic. You're the fastest thing alive. You're the blue blur great. Shut up already. It was great.
Yeah, I love the dynamic there. It's very Goku and Vegeta, which means a whole lot to me. And we'll talk more about that later on, I guess. But I also wanted to bring some attention to Tails and Knuckles. They get a lot of screen time here, and I want to especially draw attention to Tails. Mm-hmm. I feel like Tails didn't really get his day in the second movie, where he was just kind of accompanying Sonic, but he didn't really have an active part in the role of the story. But this time, Tails is out here getting stuff done, and I love it.
Tails is the MVP of this movie, I feel. And as someone who has always personally been on Team Tails, I've always been a big Tails fan, and I feel like they did him so much justice in this movie. And I will always say this, and I'll say it again, shout-outs to the team for bringing Colleen O'Shaughnessy on for the voice of Tails. I feel bad because I feel like, we've got Ben Schwartz, we've got Idris Elba, and no disrespect to the rest of the game voice cast, but if they had to bring anyone from the games into the movies, I'm so glad it was Colleen. Like, she is Tails, and I cannot imagine anyone else in that role. She's absolutely perfect. And when I got home, I looked into some behind the scenes featurettes and stuff. If you look at all the actors, in terms of actual voice acting, she is the one who is manipulating her voice the most. Everyone else is they mostly sound like the characters are doing, and they're great actors, don't get me wrong, they're great. But Colleen is the one who is actually manipulating her voice the most, and she is pitch perfect, no pun intended.
Yeah, she does a great job as Tails. She always has.
Yeah.
And I love the balance they strike in this movie between Tails being this badass smart guy with so many cool gadgets that can do so many crazy things, while also being just adorable. There's even this scene with Agent Stone where they're walking through a hallway, and Agent Stone's like, all right, I'm just going to come out and say it. You're really adorable. And I was like, he is.
He is so true.
Yeah, I was worried about how, this movie was going to obviously focus on Sonic and Shadow. I was worried like Tails and Knuckles were going to kind of get the back seat for the most part, and they pretty much balanced all these characters pretty well for given like the allotted time they have for this movie. And like you were saying, like in that hallway, Tails had some good moments. He was the one telling Stone, like, "Have you ever had a friend before?" Made Stone reconsider his entire situation and where he is right now with Robotnik. And how, like, yeah, they're a team. It's Sonic is the leader, Knuckles is the muscle, and Tails is, the brains of the operations. And they can't really operate as Team Sonic one without the other. So it's always nice to see them just kind of communicating in that way and just working together throughout the whole movie, honestly.
Yeah, teamwork was one of the themes of the movie, and they showcased the teamwork between Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles to great effect. They have great character chemistry. Knuckles, his stupid, dumb, tribal, like I'm a strong man, like one-liners are so funny. They never fall short for me. Like, if he's just a big dumb idiot for the rest of this movie franchise, that's perfect.
Idris Elba continues to be the Knuckles I never knew I needed and loved. I just never would have imagined he would play such a perfect Knuckles, but here we are, 2 movies in and a streaming series, which he was kind of in for like half of it, maybe less than half. He is, like I said, the Knuckles I never knew I needed. He's so good in the role, and I love it.
Yeah, we have been blessed by Idris Elba's Knuckles.
Yeah.
And for people who have seen Knuckles, the show, there you don't really need to, I guess, to watch the movie. There are a couple of things that they reference from that I enjoyed. Namely, one thing from the end of the show that did make an appearance in the movie. I didn't think it would, but it did. They didn't even name drop it. It just kind of happened, and I'm like, great, that's awesome. That the show wasn't pointless. Yay! And then we get a little bit of a Wade Whipple appearance in the movie as well. He gets his day, a very brief day, but he gets it.
Does he though? Because that was one of the few things that I was like, I don't know, because we watched the show, and it ended up being a show more about Wade than Knuckles. Okay, fine. So that happened. Wade was supposed to come into his own, and then I get this sense that, like, okay, maybe he's actually going to do something of import, but he's literally playing hockey with the Master Emerald, and then he doesn't actually try to keep it from Sonic at all. I know he couldn't have actually done anything. I realize that. But, like, did this movie showcase any of the growth he was supposed to have gone through in the series? I feel like it didn't at all. I'm like, what was the point?
Just the disrespect to the Master Emerald.
Yeah. I'm like, what was the point of, he didn't, I don't know. I just feel like maybe he could have done something a little bit more, but maybe not. I don't know.
He did have a level of confidence that he wouldn't have had in the first 2 movies.
Fair.
Like, Sonic showed up, and Sonic was not in a very good mood
He was
at the
pissed.
moment.
Yeah.
He was pretty upset. And I think movie 1 and movie 2 Wade would have been a little afraid of that moment, but no, he was just super okay with what was happening even
Fair.
after Sonic took the Master Emerald from him. He was just like, all right,
Yeah.
it's a Tuesday.
I tried.
I do think, he probably could have done a little bit more, but I think with the amount of characters that they were already balancing, the role, basically the cameo role he ended up having in the movie was probably the right call.
Yeah. Agreed.
If you guys are okay with it, we can probably start digging into the spoiler territory.
All right.
There was, I guess, there's just a couple of other things with, I guess, with Jim Carrey. Like, I still appreciate his appearance, despite the fact that he is, even though I mentioned that he's a bit, in the movie, a lot more than I expected he would be. I still appreciate having wacky, zany 90s Jim Carrey in a movie at any time, at any given points. God, the scene where him and we're both Robotniks are just, they're just having a disco jam in the lasers, in deathly lasers.
I love that part. Yeah.
That was, I felt like I was having a fever dream watching that.
It's so funny when that started because I hate the dance scene from the second movie. I can't stand it. I hate that it happens. I've softened on it a little bit as I've seen the movie more than, a few times now. But Like, it felt like the part that was pandering to children. But this time, Jim Carrey just gives it his all. Him dancing with himself was shockingly funny. I really, really liked it.
Same. And I told my wife too, I was like, look, we're like half his age-ish, and the fact that he could move like that at his age, and I can't dance like that. I don't have that much energy.
He was wearing a fat suit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was wearing a fat suit. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of energy at almost half his age. He is amazing at what he does. It was so fun to watch.
He is incredible, and his ringtone that played for like a single second was his theme from Sonic Adventure 2, and I barely caught that. I appreciate any of those references.
It's funny though. I almost, even though we had double the Jim Carrey, one of my like minor complaints was that we didn't have more of regular Eggman. Like, obviously Gerald Robotnik was an important plot point in this movie, and you had to give him a lot of screen time. But I didn't enjoy Gerald Jim Carrey as much as regular Ivo Jim Carrey. And I almost wish that he was the sole villain again, because I enjoy watching him so frickin' much. Not that I disliked Gerald Robotnik. I enjoyed him as well, but just there's something about the no pun intended, chaos and just absolute madness of regular Eggman Jim Carrey that I loved seeing him so much in 1 and 2, and I wanted to see more of him in 3, but of course he had to share screen time with himself. And, Gerald was great, but man, if this is the end, getting into spoilers, of Ivo Robotnik in the movies, I almost wish we got to see a little bit more of him in this movie,
I do agree. But at the same time, I do feel like he gave his all into the Ivo performance. Especially when Ivo is solo on screen. He's full on, playing it up. He's hammering it up. He's being Robotnik at 150%.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think part of it too is just the uncertainty whether we'll get more of that later or not. To dive into spoilers a little bit more aggressively now, this might be the end of Jim Carrey's Robotnik role. It seemed pretty final to me, but it's hard to say.
It seemed final last time, so I think they've kind of left that open. So it's like, oh, Jim Carrey, if you want to come back for the next one, we have the plot opening to do so.
One of my favorite tropes in media is a villain becoming a good guy. It's, as a Dragon Ball fan, like, that's all that happens in that show. So like,
it's the whole show.
I eat that up. I eat it for breakfast. So the turn on the Space Colony arc when Robotnik, full spoilers now, by the way, chat. If you don't want it, you gotta run away. The turn on the Space Colony arc where Ivo finally understands that his grandfather is a truly heinous person. He's evil. He does not care about him. And he's planning to destroy the whole planet.
Yeah.
Robotnik, Eggman's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. He's like, I'd rather rule the world than destroy it. And there is that end, that part at the end with, and we saw this in one of the previews, but it, obviously when you see it in the context of the movie, it lands a lot harder. His final live stream to Agent Stone, where he's like, if I can't rule the world, I might as well save it. That whole part kind of got me. I was like getting a little emotional. I was like, oh man, I don't want. First of all, I don't want this character to die, but also the relationship between him and Stone, and the way he's like, well, if I can't rule the world, I might as well save it. I was like, oh man, I'm getting in my feels here at the end.
It's like, man, are they gonna ever have guacamole again? They need to have that revenge guacamole again. Getting sad over here.
Or the goat milk lattes.
The goat milk latte. Oh, and when he said, "I love the way you make them," I'm like, "Oh God, no!"
That was shockingly effective.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm like, "Oh, this is okay." I'm definitely in my feels now. The waterworks are on their way. Yeah.
I wasn't sold so much from the Agent Stone side of that plot. I don't think he was given enough screen time for that story, personally. But from Ivo's side, yeah, I was really feeling it. And even before that, like, there's that moment where the Sonic and Shadow are holding the laser and preventing it from hitting the Earth, and Knuckles, Eggman, and Tails are like turning the Space Colony Ark away from the planet so that it doesn't get hit. There was something about seeing Eggman and Tails specifically working together that really warmed my heart. Like, you know, they share gameplay in Sonic Adventure 2. They're both smarty pants people. So to have them work together meant a lot to me.
Yeah, that was such a great reference to the games, right? Because, you know, we've seen in the games that Tails and Eggman kind of form a begrudging, mutually respectful relationship, right? And we've seen that now borne out in the movies, and I so agree. It was so cool seeing them work together as fellow eggheads.
Yeah, that whole scene inside the I keep wanting to call it the Ark, but inside the Eclipse cannon itself, because they had to they really adjust some of the story plots to kind of make it adjacent, but still somewhat. It just pretty much becomes Sonic Adventure 2 in the last half, essentially. But yeah, that was such an awesome moment, seeing these characters come together in such a way. Just absolutely the anticlimacticness of Gerald Robotnik just getting
yeah,
that was it.
Yeah,
that was the hardest I laughed in the entire movie.
Yeah, it was they both you know, Ivo and Gerald had their proper character arcs, I think, and I agree that got me, you know, it elicited some good laughs from me. And now that we're in full spoiler territory, I'll just say this: the Act 3 showdown between Sonic and Shadow is probably my favorite part of the movie, including their resolution, where they're just sitting on the moon, chatting and talking, you know, and coming to terms with each other and figuring out who the other one is and why Shadow is so angry, and everything about that, you know, Sonic going rogue and taking the Master Emerald, going super, and then their whole fight. And that one, you know, Shadow is a master shit talker. And that one part where they're at the ruins and he's like, you know, oh, I'm sorry, you know, what was his name again? Tom. And then Sonic gets pissed and just beats down Shadow. It was so good. That whole part was just, it was just Goku Vegeta, right? And it was so good to see. I'm like, this is amazing, seeing this on the big screen.
This is the closest I'll ever get to live-action Dragon Ball Z.
Basically, yeah, exactly. And I was just so seeing Super Sonic and Super Shadow fight. That was, as I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, I just, you know, turned to my wife. I was like, "This is porn. This is just, we're just watching porn right now. It's great."
There's the specific sequence where they're like punching each other like out into the distance, and they're just suddenly on different parts of Earth because they're going so fast. I was like, what is happening right now?
So good, yeah.
Because like the Robotniks are looking at from the Eclipse cannon down to Earth, and you see like the little like zips of yellow going across the countries, and just like, oh my god, yeah, that's the scale at which they're fighting in. And I was wondering how they were going to actually incorporate Super Shadow in this whole entire movie. And yeah, it was just because Super Sonic came earlier than I expected. Like I didn't think we would see him like that soon, and I guess they kind of had to get the whole like into space sort of deal. And yeah, I had forgotten for a while that the Master Emerald and the Chaos Emeralds were just like all one thing at this point. So once they both became super, I was like, oh boy, now it's going down.
Now it's on, yeah.
And then we had the ever so glorious moment where they power up together. They clasp their fists, the clasps of friendship, and they go super, and Live and Learn starts playing.
Yep.
And Michaela was sitting next to me, and she lost her mind.
Yep.
They're like, ah!
My whole theater cheered when Live and Learn came on, as did I. I yelled. I was like, oh my god, they understood the assignment. They did the thing. It was so cool, man. Like, it was absolute joy. Like, I can only imagine what I've heard from other people who are like, you know, fathers. I'm obviously not one. I don't have kids, but I've heard from fathers who are going to see these movies with their kids, and they're like, it is so wild to me for my kid to want to see these movies and play these games so much, And these are characters that I grew up with. So I can only imagine what it must be like for people like that. Because here I am, middle-aged as I am, and I'm watching these characters I love on screen so much and just feeling like a kid again. And these movies, I mean, Sonic 3 must be the most accurate video game to movie adaptation of all time, right? Maybe we can save some room for Mario, because Mario is very accurate as well. But like in terms of being a direct adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2, it's made for the fans. It is made for Sonic fans like us. It's crazy.
The utter catharsis of the two supers both fighting and then eventually working together to take down the Eclipse Cannon. I mean, it nearly brought me to tears. Like,
Yeah,
I was
same.
like, I can't believe this movie exists.
Yep.
This would have never happened even 10 years ago. Like, this is unheard of a movie adapting a game that is so, like, insane, and like, there's anthropomorphic hedgehogs going to space, becoming Super Saiyans and fighting aliens and robots, and I'm like, and they made it work.
And
it's so
they
good.
destroyed the moon. They still took out a chunk of the moon and made it work.
There's something about it's like when you think back to how you as a kid remembered playing these games, you playing Sonic Adventure 2 and getting to the last act and seeing all the cutscenes and all that stuff happening, and then you see it adapted in a theater, and it's like, of course, these people who made this, like, they understand Sonic, and they pretty much brought what we had imagined way back then to the big screen, to like proportions that we never would have thought about, even like as you mentioned 10 years ago. And to see that is just, it's very fulfilling. I feel so justified in being a Sonic fan for all these years to see moments like that happen. And how accurate they try to stay as accurate as they can, because like moving the Eclipse Cannon away, the moon still gets sliced into a piece, which is hilarious. Like they couldn't adapt it enough so that the Eclipse Cannon was the moon, so they still or so that it was in space, like in that way, but they still managed a way to slice the moon a piece off. And yeah, it's just so many layers in there that people would just, Sonic fans like us, would appreciate. It's awesome.
It's such a fulfilling moment for so many people. I still can't believe that this movie is real and happened, and that I've seen it.
I mean, especially where we came from, right? Like,
Yeah.
whether you believe Ugly Sonic was like a marketing stunt or not, the fact that we came from those first teaser posters of Sonic 1 thinking, oh, this is going to be a disaster, this is going to be awful, to where we are now, the best video game adaptation to, like, video game to movie adaptation series ever. Like, I never would have imagined we'd be living in a timeline where the Sonic movies, of all possible games, the Sonic movies are the ones that are the most faithful and the ones that everybody looks forward to in terms of video game to movie adaptations.
But because
Yeah.
of that series of events, we never will be able to see what Ugly Shadow looks like. Can we live in a world like that?
True. Can we? I can't imagine. Oh God, I hadn't thought about that. Like taking Ugly Sonic and then applying that to Shadow. I hadn't. Not even just Shadow. Tails and Knuckles. Imagine if Ugly Sonic had gone forward. What Shadow, Tails, and Knuckles would have looked like. Oh God.
You have photorealistic anthropomorphic foxtails and Abomination Knuckles.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about
God.
Knuckles.
Oh man, I guess we should talk a little bit about Shadow's backstory. There are some other elements of the ending I want to get to as well, but Shadow's backstory does see some significant change. Like the reason he exists is seemingly different now.
Right.
I couldn't quite get a read on that, because like he comes from space, which is, I guess, kind of true in the original story, but he's also a creation in the original story, and that's not the case anymore. So just want to field some opinions. What do you think's going on here?
Well,
I mean, oh, go ahead, Daniel.
well, they're all aliens, and that's how they're trying to streamline the whole concept. Like, they're from different worlds. That's why they justified them breathing in space, I assume, because they're all aliens.
Right.
But yeah, I guess with Shadow, I thought that was Black Doom when that landed on Earth. Like,
Yeah.
that just
Yeah,
looks like
same.
Black Doom, but it's just Shadow himself inside of there. So I don't know if that's gonna be another plot later in some other movie. Who knows? Or if that's gonna just be, that's just Shadow's origin story now, as far as the movie Shadow goes. But yeah,
I do think that meteor or meteorite or whatever you call it, I still think that is Black Doom, and that Shadow may have been born from it. Did we see what happened to it? Is that ever?
We didn't. We
Okay.
didn't see what happened to the meteor itself. It kind of seems like he broke out of it. That's what I got. Like I definitely got from that meteor. I was like, oh, Black Doom, and I feel like that was them kind of leaving it open. If they are going to explore Shadow's origin in the future, they have left it open for it to be Black Doom, right? For them to introduce like this alien race from which Shadow came. The meteorite definitely read like Black Doom to me. So obviously they didn't mention him by name, but they have left it open to have that origin story in the movies if they want to. But yeah, it seems like more or less, they left room for it to be like if they want to go into, Earth, certain people on Earth having a pact with the Black Arms to create this crazy weapon. They left all that open to do that if they want, but it does seem as though Shadow just kind of ambiguously existed to be a super weapon in this version, as opposed to, Gerald creating him to be the ultimate life form, not necessarily as a weapon, but to be, to heal all forms of sickness, like with Maria. But in this case, Maria was never sick. So they did kind of leave that ambiguous, I agree.
did they ever utter the words "ultimate life form" in this movie?
They did.
Once,
I think,
right?
Just one
Yeah,
time.
the general guy, I forget his name. When
Yeah.
he's telling his backstory, he refers to him as the ultimate life form.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Yeah, because there was just some missing lingo we didn't have. He never uttered chaos control, which I'm sad about. So I thought that was
Yeah,
that was
they-
going to be like the big moment, like when Shadow takes over, readjusting the Eclipse cannon or something. But not even then. So
Yeah, they talk a lot about him embodying chaos energy and being able to control chaos energy, but he never actually says chaos control. Interestingly enough, yeah.
I mean, they're even kind of cagey with the Chaos Emeralds. I'm trying to remember. I know they're mentioned in the origin story of the Master Emerald in the second movie, but did they ever call them the Chaos Emeralds?
That much I can't remember. I need to go back and watch Sonic 2 again. Because they only mention the Master Emerald by name. They don't mention the Chaos Emeralds in this movie, which is interesting.
I mean, they make an appearance several times.
Yeah.
It's just a little odd. The other thing about the Chaos Emeralds as well, when Shadow is blocking the Eclipse Cannon laser, he's still Super Shadow. So does he still have Chaos Emeralds on him? Where did they go?
Where do they go?
we don't know where they went. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when Sonic goes to get the Master Emerald from Wade, we find out that the Chaos Emeralds are kind of within the Master Emerald. So do they?
Yeah.
Are they always with the Master Emerald, or can they ever be separate from it? Can they exist in different places?
In the second movie, the Master Emerald is destroyed towards the end, and the Chaos Emeralds fall out of it. And then Sonic becomes Super Sonic. And then he kind of puts them back together to become the Master Emerald again.
Yeah.
They're going in a wildly different direction with the whole Master Emerald business, but like it's still not quite clear how it all works. But yeah, the Emerald's fate is not answered by the end of the movie.
Right, and neither really, to that point, is Eggman's. Like, obviously, they left it open for Jim Carrey to decide to return or not. But, even more than the second movie, where, the second movie, you could say he ambiguously died. And even in Sonic 3, they say, oh, we thought he was dead. But this time, it really does seem as though, like, how did he actually survive that? And of course, they'll contrive whatever they have to. If Jim Carrey says, hey, I'm on for Sonic 4, he's coming back, as he should. But it really did feel like a finality this time that didn't exist in the second movie.
As we know from the post-credit scene, the second one, Shadow survived.
Yes.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
And part of me wonders if they'll just use Shadow as the excuse. Like, Shadow was up there. Maybe he did some weird chaos control business to save Eggman before he died.
I could see it. I was thinking the same thing. Like, why once he and Shadow and Eggman had somewhat of a similar character arc in the movie where they both had to learn not to choose wrong, right? Shadow had to learn to choose not revenge, and Eggman had to choose, to save the world rather than rule it. So I could see that, in Shadow's eyes, if he had seen that Ivo had changed and had made the right decision, I could see him being like, okay, well, I'm going to save you too. Like, there's no reason not to, right?
He's related to the person he loves most.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
They do leave up a lot of questions in that regard, and I appreciate them doing that, but I also appreciate them giving Eggman his kind of finality, like you said, if he decides that will be his last performance as Eggman. It feels fitting if that's the case.
It does.
Yeah.
Even Agent Stone's fate is like unclear. He just kind of walks away from the camera, and for all we know, we're never going to see him again.
Oh, there's no way. Like, I feel... Well, I don't know that they're setting him up to be the next villain, but there's no way we don't see Agent Stone again, right? He's become too popular.
He's going to be the barista at the Mean Bean forever.
I know, right?
He's gonna go there again. Yeah.
I do wonder, though, if they're maybe leaving it open to set him up as the next big bad, because at the same time, it's hard to see Agent Stone as a big bad, right? Because of his... like the whole conversation he had with Tails, as we talked about earlier. Oh, you're just adorable. And he's just so likable. It's so hard to see him as like a truly evil villain, right?
Yeah, I don't see him being a villain. He just wanted a friend.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah. But that does, I guess, and now we're obviously in full spoiler mode, but that does leave the question open. If Jim Carrey doesn't return, obviously Gerald's gone, Ivo's gone, who do we see as the next big bad? Like, obviously, the post-credits scene sets up not just one Metal Sonic, but an army of Metal Sonics. But, like, where do they come from? Like, are they posthumous activated creations of Robotnik? Like, who's the next big bad?
My crackpot theory is that Sonic 4 will be some kind of fusion of Sonic CD and Sonic Heroes.
Oh, okay.
And that Metal Sonic is from the past, come to the future.
Oh, okay, I like it.
Created by Eggman back then, because Eggman multiple times has had access to one of Sonic's quills. And maybe that's how he creates Metal Sonic in this universe.
Before he went good at the end of Sonic 3. Yeah, I see. And then we see Metal Sonic at the end in Act 3 become Metal Overlord.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think is going to happen, but I'm curious what you guys think.
Oh, I'm so excited that they introduced Metal Sonic at the end. I went to this movie with my cousin, and we were both talking to each other beforehand, and we were like, oh man, if they do a post-credit cutscene, what will they add? Who are they gonna add? It's Metal Sonic. They have to have Metal Sonic, because they wanted to go to Shadow first, because he's like the most popular Sonic character that isn't Sonic, so of course they're gonna do that first. But after that, of course, it's going to be like Metal, and also Amy as well. They both are the characters introduced with Sonic CD, and I was really excited knowing that they're going to go Sonic CD next. They're going to do Sonic CD. And the metal design it's exactly Metal Sonic. It's not even like altered to like the other characters are. It's exactly the same Metal Sonic design, like with the same like singular visor eye and all that nonsense, and that there's a whole bunch of them, but. They're also portraying Amy to not be your damsel in distress, which is amazing. Like she's already like a hardened warrior or something. So I guess That's the thing. With this, they're also going to do some kind of like time thing, because that's the whole thing with Sonic CD is that you have bad futures, good futures, bad past, and are you going to the past and whatnot? So, oh boy, we're going into time travel with the next one potentially, because if there's no more, we don't know what happened with the Chaos Emeralds or the Master Emeralds. So are they going to use the Time Stones this time? Is that going to be a thing that they introduce? It's weird that they're going to go in that direction, but it seems like that's what they're most likely going to do in this case.
You know, and that also leaves open the possibility for Sonic to once again have like a face-to-face with Longclaw. Like, you know, if they're doing time travel, you know, obviously we know that this version of Sonic, a lot of who he is and his character arc hinges upon is, you know, his Longclaw's parentage and the way he was raised. And if we're doing time travel with Amy and Metal Sonic and the Time Stones, that gives them a chance to meet again. And I was wondering, like, is Amy from the same planet as Sonic? Were they both raised by Longclaw? Like, you know, is that where they're going with this? And I also have to eat crow in this because I'm a big fan of Amy. I think I especially love her in the Sonic Boom cartoon series. I love what they've done with her character in the main games more recently, like with games like Sonic Frontiers. But you know, before Sonic 3 came out, I'm like, well, who are they going to introduce? Because obviously Shadow is by far the biggest draw. He's like a fan favorite character. Can Amy like really, you know, draw that same hype? Like, can they really introduce her in the post-credit scene and get hype? I was wrong. My theater was like, oh my God, Amy! And I'm like, me too. I'm like, hell yeah, Amy. But I didn't think that she would get that same kind of hype that Shadow did. And at least in my theater, people were screaming. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's go, man.
Of course. She has a really
not just
good...
a boys club anymore.
Yeah.
I really like her design too. Like you only see it for like a few seconds, but I really like how they portray her design. And we don't even know if it's going to be like a classic Amy outfit or if it's going to be like her other. I'm sure they'll have both outfits in some way or another in said movie, like her most known outfits. But yeah, she's like in this hooded cape and everything, and looks like a hardened warrior that's been through battles already with her hammer just flying around everywhere. And they're going to be fighting Metal, and oh my God, they might have the Stardust Speedway theme when they're fighting each other here as well, you guys. The classic theme that plays when they're always fighting. Oh my God, I want to see what happens with this one. I'm excited for this one.
I would love it if the movie has the final battle between Sonic and Metal Sonic as like the end of like Act 1. Like we just do that right away. And then Act 3, all the Metal Sonics fuse into Metal Overlord.
It'd be so cool.
That way you can have a little bit of both, because obviously Metal Sonic, just in his pure state, I doubt will be the final villain.
No, it's got to be Metal Overlord, right?
You don't introduce 400 Metal Sonics and be like, that's the bad guy.
That's it.
I'm so excited that this is the direction they're going in. We've been predicting this since Sonic 2, that Sonic 4 would be Sonic CD, so that's awesome that they're playing right into that. And I agree about Amy's design. I think it's great. It's a little more spiky than like her actual modern design, so I wonder if it's going to be, excuse me, if it's going to be some kind of like in between of her Sonic CD design and something more modern. Because I'd like that. I'm not a big fan of Amy's current design, to be honest.
Oh, really? Okay.
I vastly prefer classic Amy's design.
Same
so
here.
having an in between would be much cooler.
Mm-hmm. I'm here for it, regardless. It was so hype seeing Amy and of course the army of Metal Sonics, and yeah, I'm here for it. Wherever they want to go from here, you know, and just. It's going to be interesting, though, because oftentimes you think of, you know, like trilogies, like, you know, 1, 2, and 3. And then when you go beyond a trilogy, when you start calling things blank 4, blank 5, sometimes the returns are diminishing, right? And so I'm really curious to see how they capitalize on Sonic 3, the big crescendo of Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow and the Eclipse Cannon and Super Sonic and Super Shadow. Like, that all happened. How are they going to keep the hype up for Sonic 4, right? And obviously they're already starting off on the right foot with Amy and Metal Sonic, but, you know, in the eyes of just the general viewer, there's something about the limit of 3, right? Where, like, when you go beyond that, sometimes, like, people are like, oh, I don't know, 4, but obviously they're starting off on the right foot, and Sonic 4 is coming. We've already seen in 2027 it's coming. So how are they going to market it in such a way that raises the stakes even from Shadow and the Eclipse canon, and makes people excited again, right?
I think that Jeff Fowler and everyone working on these movies are viewing this more from a superhero lens, like from a Marvel perspective. Like, clearly that's what they're doing with these post-credit scenes. Like, they're always thinking ahead. So I don't know if they're so much worried about that, because the Marvel universe was a very, very successful experiment. And that has way more than 3 movies, all said and done. Not all of them are just a single hero title, unlike Sonic, but Sonic is also slowly introducing characters from its universe. So it's basically the same strategy.
Yeah, they're going so far as doing the same direction as having like a mini sub-series on a different platform, as we did with Knuckles. Like, they're following the same format at this point.
Right.
And but yeah, I'm really interested to see like what kind of shape or form they're going to continue taking with this one, because the parallels now with certain movies and certain characters is it's changed. Like, the times are different now. Princess Peach in the Super Mario Brothers movie is not your damsel in distress either. She's really active. She actually, she does things, and they're doing the same exact thing as far as what we see from from the 10 seconds we saw her. The same thing is happening with Amy, where she's not just gonna stand around and have Metal Sonic whisk her away, as far as what we're seeing here. So yeah, she was defending Sonic of all things in there. So I'm curious to see if she's gonna be the veteran fighter compared to Sonic here. It's gonna be super interesting to see that dynamic unfold as time goes on.
Absolutely.
This just popped into my head. It's just a random thing I was thinking about. I really appreciated the moment earlier in the movie where the Eclipse cannon is like rising into the air, and like you see all the news stations all across the world are like warning everybody that Dr. Robotnik is back, except in Japan. In the Japan newscast, they specifically called him Eggman.
Yep, I noticed that too.
Really, really liked that. That
very
was
cool.
Super cool.
So many cool little Easter eggs like that, and I mentioned this earlier, but the whole Chow Garden segment, like reimagining Chow Garden as like a tourist attraction in Japan, was perfect. It was so good.
They're mascots, and if you look carefully, you do see an ad for Chow in space in Tokyo.
I saw that. Yep, it's so good.
I want to see that movie. I'm still waiting. That's the side movie we're gonna get eventually, right? Sega?
I want to go to a real Chow Garden. Like, I want to go to Japan and go eat at Chow Garden with all the mascot characters. I want to do that.
So, I mean, it's very clear at this point that we all absolutely loved this movie. I'm very confident in saying I think this is the best of the 3. For as much as I liked 2, I think 3 definitely eclipses it.
I think so. I need to see 2 again to be sure, but I'm fairly certain, though, that 3 is my favorite of the trilogy. Yeah, like or the trilogy thus far. I really love 2, but I feel like 3 probably does, no pun intended, eclipse it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think the Sonic movies are getting better and better, and we'll see if that trend continues with the next one.
My fear is that they're going to get past Sonic CD, maybe also Sonic Heroes if they do end up doing that, and that's when things get concerning for me.
Like, where do they go from that, right? Because CD is like the last great frontier.
You're not excited for them to introduce Big in Sonic 5?
I would almost rather them, after Sonic 4, just start writing original stories. Because I'm not so interested in Sonic Unleashed or Sonic Colors or Sonic Frontiers. Maybe Sonic Frontiers.
I was going to say, they could maybe make a cool movie out of Frontiers, right? Maybe that's where they go after this. Like the giant, the giant robot, the giant, they're basically kaiju.
They haven't.
So maybe they could do something out of Frontiers, but but also then who do you who do you introduce as the big post-credit stinger? Because if you do Silver, then you've got to adapt Sonic 2006, which nobody wants.
Rouge the Bat. Rouge the Bat. That's who you put in the end credit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Rouge yeah.
That reminds me, I'd hate if I forgot to mention this. There was the female director agent at Gunn
Rockwell.
Oh, right.
who clearly had her own motives regarding the two keys, and
Yeah.
that's never touched on again.
And that just kind of just went nowhere. Right, you're right.
What was going on there?
Yeah.
You don't know what Rockwell was doing at that point. I don't know.
The rumor before the movie came out was that she was going to voice Rouge the Bat. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe she actually is Rouge the Bat. Because Rouge is a gun agent. They introduced the
Right.
cloaking devices in the movie that Tails invented. And I'm like, I know she's really short compared to a full-size human, but something weird's going on there. And they definitely left that wide open. And they made you forget about it. They just never touch on it again.
It's gonna be that thing that you look back on and you're like, oh, from that moment in that movie. They're setting it up, aren't they? They could be. It sounds like they could be if they wanted to.
Yeah, it's that was the big question mark for me. Like, honestly, bigger than anything else in the movie. There's just a weird moment with a character that we barely met, and they just leave it alone.
Yeah, they just never really follow up on it. So that assumes that maybe she'll come back in Sonic 4 and maybe play a larger role. Yeah, maybe, like you said, maybe she actually is Rouge.
Yeah, it was a very weird thing, because you have Tom who pretends to be the general, and she's obviously concerned that she got caught, but we don't know why.
Right. Right.
So I hope that is leading towards something, and it's not just some weird blip in the third movie that I'll think about for the rest of my life.
Or maybe she's moonlighting, but she's from an alternate dimension and she's actually Blaze.
Oh, that's right. How it's so silly. Obviously, she's definitely Chaos in disguise from Sonic Adventure.
Oh, right. That's
Clearly,
how we choose. We can't have this movie series without chaos in it, of course.
So yeah, I wanted to bring that up before I forgot because I'm still thinking about it. But before we wrap up here, is there anything you guys wanted to touch on or mention?
This movie had a really cool Akira slide going literally up a building, straight up a building, and then he's like standing on the bike, and then he just leaps downward, and it was just like that was a cool sequence of actions there.
Oh, they're in another Easter egg, the opening scene where Shadow is hatching from his sleep state. On the control center, there was a little Gamma statue.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I don't know if it was Gamma or Omega. It's one of them.
One of them, yeah.
But it was there right on the dashboard.
That's so cool. I didn't catch that. That's great.
Yeah, a lot of great Easter eggs in this movie. A lot of great moments in this movie. I saw during the credits that Escape from the City was in the movie, and I have no idea where it was.
Yeah, I saw that too. Where did they play it? Like, it wasn't obvious, like the piano where they were playing Green Hill Zone, but like, yeah, where was that? I saw that too.
Sonic
Did
said,
you catch it, Daniel?
Sonic said, "Follow me," and that's all I know. I don't know where I heard the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says that when they're flying towards the Eclipse Cannon. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I remember seeing that during the credits and being like, where?
Yeah,
where was it?
I didn't catch that at all, which is one more reason I need to go. I need to race back to the theater and see this movie again because I'm so curious. Yeah,
I think I'm gonna go see it again too.
Probably.
I really liked it.
I want to for sure. Yeah.
Anything else before we wrap up?
I think that's it for me.
Nothing from you, Daniel?
No, that's pretty much what I wanted to bring up. That's all I got.
All right. Well, that's Sonic 3, the greatest Sonic the Hedgehog movie ever made until Sonic 4 blows it out of the water somehow. I'm both concerned and excited for the future. Like, They did such a great job with Sonic 3. I hope they only go up from here.
Same.
Obviously, they're committed to Sonic as a universe now, to the lore. They're not afraid to just do the weird stuff from the games and just let that be at the forefront. Like Daniel said, Metal Sonic just literally being Metal Sonic with no changes to his design.
And there being like a million of them, too.
Yeah, they're all in.
Yeah, I love it.
I have a soft spot for Sonic CD, for as weird as that game is and how it aesthetically doesn't really looking at that game hurts my eyes, honestly, with the way that they've done the art style. But I still love it for what it is and for the characters that it introduced. So I'm excited.
Growing up, Sonic CD was my favorite 2D Sonic game, which I know is a weird opinion to have. And I adore Metal Sonic's design. It's so clean. And so cool. I think I like Metal Sonic more than Shadow as a villain, personally.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I'm all in for that direction for Sonic 4. But
I will say this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I will say this. One of my favorite lines, and shout outs to Ben Schwartz for just, he's great in general as Sonic. But the way he delivered that post-credits line where he's like, if you're targeting the fastest thing alive, you better not miss. I was like, oh, that's so cool. What a good line. The way he delivered it was perfect, and I love that.
You just reminded me of Shadow criticizing Sonic for having a catchphrase on the moon.
Yeah. And people love it. It was so good.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love these movies. I can't wait to see Sonic 4 and whatever else they do with the series. Maybe they'll do more shows. Who knows? But we have a little over 2 years because they said it's early 2027, so probably the first few months of the year. So a little over 2 years away from Sonic 4. I can't wait to see what happens. But
same.
Until then, keep the games good, the vibes greater. Bye now.
Till we meet again.
Bye.